Thank you so much, Gibson. My name is Anne Marie Holman. As Gibson said, I am the Public Information Officer for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I'm also the former Outreach Committee Chair for the Congress of Neighborhoods. I have a long history with the Congress. This is my 7th year teaching here, and I started teaching here while I was still a neighborhood council member. I was elected to the Echo Park Neighborhood Council about almost 8 years ago now, I think, and I chaired the land use committee there. So that's a little bit of my history with the neighborhood council system. I've got a total of 15 years of experience in digital media, digital communications, public relations, and community engagement. So today, what I want to talk to you about, this is going to be a very short session, shorter than what we really need to adequately cover social media. I know that we have a lot of new folks here at the Congress this year because of the recent elections. So what I want to do today, my goal is to give you an overview of everything you need to know to be aware of regarding social media and digital communications as a neighborhood council member. So I'm actually going to delve into policies and things like that also. This is where you're going to find this is the short link to get this slideshow and to get some of the other resources for this class. I'm going to enter this into the chat as well so that you can just click the link and go there if you'd like. I have made the font size fairly friendly for mobile, but if you'd prefer to just open your own copy, you can, as well as take a look at the other tools in that folder. Other tools are going to be added to that folder over the coming week. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get all of your email addresses from the Congress afterwards. If I can, I'll be sending you a follow-up by the end of next week. If not, please bookmark this link because you'll see that there are a few resources already in this folder in addition to this copy of this slideshow. And I will be adding material there throughout the week that goes with this presentation. So here's a quick look at things that we have upcoming, first of all, that are going to impact your social media use as neighborhood council members, particularly if you're someone who runs the accounts for your neighborhood council, makes the marketing decisions, and so forth. We have a citywide neighborhood council awareness and engagement survey that is about to launch. We're partnering with a company called Eviterus that has wonderful reach. We're going to be able to reach I think about 1.2 million Angelenos total with this survey. So please look out for your copy. If you're a neighborhood council member, you will be receiving a copy. It'll go to the public email address that you use that's tied to your neighborhood council role. I'll be sending out a reminder about it after the survey launches, but look for this to start emerging in the next week or so, late September, early October. When we get that information, we're going to have a lot of info, zip code by zip code, on whether people are aware of their neighborhood council, what their feelings are, as well as the key issues that they care about. So once we have that data, we are going to share it with you to inform your outreach. So for example, if you're doing social media ads, you want to advertise on things that'll get people interested, you know where issues that you're working on intersect with the ones that the people in your area listed on their choice of issues in this survey. So you'll be able to make those kinds of choices. This short link on this slide is the link to request the survey in case you want to share it with anyone once it does go live. Like I said, it'll be about a few days, maybe a week before it emerges. One other thing that we're doing as well is social media ads to increase neighborhood council awareness. Can all of you see this? Yeah, Gibson, will you tell me yes, since you might be the only person I can see? This
Definitely.
is a GIF that
Yes.
This is a sample for a vacancy filling ad for the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council. We'll be starting these ads for the neighborhood councils with vacancies who went in the first election regions and moving through basically, but we'll be targeting areas that have vacant board seats in order to advertise for people to join those boards. And this way we can provide some targeted support and neighborhood council awareness within those areas. We'll also be placing citywide social media ads about neighborhood council awareness as well. These will be gathering information on what your community's top concern is. What is your key issue? What's your biggest issue locally? So you'll know what people are most concerned about in your area after we gather the data from that campaign, and we'll share that with you as well. Details on upcoming trainings regarding social media. There's going to be a very short segment as part of Module 3 of the Core Institute. I saw the participant list. I think that many of you actually attended Module 1 of the Core Institute already. That's the series that we launched this year for onboarding trainings for new and returning neighborhood council members. Module 2 is happening on October 28th, and that's going to be about something entirely different. But Module 3 is about outreach. That's going to be Tuesday, November 30th at 6:30 p.m. At that time, that's going to still be a very short, high-level overview of what you need to be aware of regarding social media use as any kind of neighborhood council or committee member. I'll go more into depth on things like tools you can use, marketing with social media and other digital means, and social media policy and how that relates to best practices. We will have more in-depth sessions coming up after the Core Institute Module 3 happens in late November. I will plan to be announcing those trainings at this November 30th session so that you'll see the dates and what's being offered. But right now, while it's malleable, if you have an issue that you especially want me to address during one of these trainings that's coming up, please write to me and let me know. Now is the time to get your issue on the list. My email address is on the final slide in this series. We'll end there when we take questions at the end. So the final thing to be aware of, and this is a big one, is the draft digital communications policy for neighborhood councils. These icons represent some of the things that digital communications policy will cover. In addition to social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, NextDoor, Twitter, it'll also cover things like your websites, digital newsletters, text messaging, apps, cybersecurity, account admin and administration, and setup as well. This draft policy was created last year in partnership with the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners and the City Attorney's Office. The original version was released in September of 2020, and the current version was released in July of 2021. We also had a couple of info sessions along the way where we had in-depth discussions about this policy. This session right now that we're sitting in, this workshop today, is not really going to be the right venue to discuss this policy because the matter is now in the hands of the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, who will be making a decision about this policy soon. So if you'd like to see all the resources that are related to the digital communications policy for neighborhood councils, this is the link to visit here, tiny.cc/digital media policy report. That's tiny.cc/digital media policy report. In that folder, you'll see everything from source policies that our particular policy was based on, such as the one for city employees from the city's ITA department, as well as AB 992, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment. You'll also see feedback and CIS letters from different neighborhood councils, as well as different neighborhood council members there. And finally, you'll see a table that compares this policy section by section to policies that are similar that may also apply to neighborhood council members so that you can kind of see where this falls into the mix. The next discussion is going to be Tuesday, October 5th at the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners meeting. That's going to start at 6 p.m. The link to attend is tiny.cc/BONC. That stands for Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, tiny.cc/BONC. So please join us for that discussion. Now, this policy, the digital communications policy for neighborhood councils, will help smooth out some of the issues that some of you have been experiencing already. For example, if somebody who preceded you on another generation of your board lost the keys to your Facebook account, left without turning over the login, now they've moved out of state, how are you going to get your keys back? So this will put some things in place that will help mitigate that kind of thing. also mitigate cyberbullying in some cases as well, and help bring some clarity on how to navigate the different policies and laws that surround social media, because this is an emerging legal field. So just note, this is, like I said, not the only policy that applies to social media use by neighborhood councils and neighborhood council members. This doesn't supersede those policies. Here's a couple of the legal and policy considerations that are already in effect for neighborhood council members and others that are in government. AB 992 went into effect in January of 2021. There will be a link to this in the folder for this class. This is an amendment to the Brown Act in order to include social media recommendations for public officials. Now, neighborhood councils are subject to the Brown Act, which is state transparency law, which mandates that public business must be discussed publicly. The main thing to keep in mind is that AB 992 does not treat social media the same as other types of communication that the Brown Act applies to. On an email thread, for example, you could avoid a serial meeting, which is where a majority of members are discussing a public matter within their jurisdiction, and it happens over the course of a back and forth in an email chain. You can just avoid that altogether by limiting the number of participants so that the total number stays below the majority number for your legislative body. But AB 992 says that social media is different. Under AB 992, it could be a violation if even one member of a legislative body comments or even responds with emoji or reaction buttons to another member's post on a matter within their jurisdiction. That may sound extreme, and it did take me aback at first. And then I started thinking about the public nature of social media, so that if you saw one council member give a thumbs up to somebody's statement for or against something that might come up on one of their agendas, that's there for the world to see, and you don't know, because that's out there and it's public information and anyone you can see it. You don't know how many people might be on that same board who were impacted by seeing that statement of opinion followed by the thumbs up. So that's why when it comes to social media, one person interacting with one other person is enough to be a violation. So let me explain how that works. So AB 992 says that a member of a legislative body or a neighborhood council member is allowed to share or make a post about a matter within their jurisdiction for 3 reasons. The first is to answer questions. The second is to provide information to the public. The third is to solicit information from the public. So you can share factual information with the public, but you can't interact. You can share opinions. You can't share a matter you can't discuss a matter on a social media platform. So you can post the agenda and Zoom link for a meeting, for example, or you can provide an email to give feedback. But be careful about liking or commenting on a fellow board or committee member's post on a matter that is, or which may be, on your neighborhood council's agenda now or in the future. This is something you've got to be aware of as an NC member, whether you are interacting using your neighborhood council's official social media accounts or your own. But here's something you need to pay attention to with your personal social media accounts in particular. And that is the First Amendment and what it means in terms of limited public forums. So be aware that you could conceivably follow the requirements of the Brown Act in AB 992 and still run the risk of turning a personal social media account into what's called a limited public forum. That means that the public has the right to free speech on that forum, which is protected under the First Amendment. So using a personal account for official business, official government business, can turn that personal account into a type of public space where you are, as a public official, required to uphold the rights of the public to free speech under the First Amendment. In practice, that means that potentially you might have to put the free speech rights of somebody who is trolling you, somebody who is bullying you, ahead of your own well-being. If your account is used like a public forum, you may be unable to block trolls. You may be unable to delete their comments. You have no problem doing that on a personal account that stays personal. Now, the courts have said this is true even if you originally intended this account to only be for personal use. This issue has come up in several legal cases, including recent federal cases involving ex-President Trump and Congressmember Ocasio-Cortez. So please keep this in mind if you use your account for official neighborhood council business. You might open the door to not being able to control interactions with the public as completely as you could on a personal account. Our goal here is not to tell you, don't cross that line. Our goal is to tell you, look, this is where the line is drawn. So if you make the decision to step across that boundary, you know what you're getting into. It's a deliberate decision that you're doing because you're pursuing your passion for politics. You're not just blindly stumbling across a tripwire that you didn't know was there. So please keep this in mind. We'll be teaching more on this as the draft digital communications policy comes to fruition and we develop best practices based on that, because this is part of that. Now, I'd like to talk to you for a moment about managing interactions with people. How do you manage trolls, for example? How do you manage, how do you manage negativity? How do you handle questions? How do you deal with negativity from other board members? Let's start with that last one first. Negativity from other board members probably will fall under the code of conduct, although some of it will fall under the digital communications policy that is taking shape. There is currently another draft code of conduct in development for neighborhood council members. That is something you can also participate in the discussions on. Currently, that discussion is in the department posted info session phrase. If you're interested in learning about when this code of conduct discussion is going to take place, I think the next one is October 19th, drop a note in the chat and I'll make sure to include the RSVP link so you can sign up for those sessions after this one. So when you're dealing with negative people, I heard someone that was a social media manager for a government agency in Florida say something really great recently, where she said to draw a distinction between trolls and misinformed constituents. Not everybody who's being negative is necessarily trolling you. Not everybody who's being negative has actually crossed the line where they could actually be blocked or deleted. For example, in Los Angeles, if you use a cuss word in a social media post, that's considered an intensifier. It's the same as using bold fonts or all caps. It's like you're underlining what you're saying, but it's not considered a reason to delete something on its own. In other places, that's judged differently, but in Los Angeles, cussing doesn't mean you can delete it. One of the biggest reasons I've noticed for negative comments that we receive on our department accounts, which I manage, is that we have people who have lost their faith in government. I think this is an important role for neighborhood councils. You are the real person, face of government. You're the government official next door. And so because of that, you have a chance to be far more credible in the public's eyes than somebody who's far away at some central government place of business like City Hall. So you have the opportunity to restore that faith, but you may take a slap in the face while you reach in and try and pick that person up and stand them back up and say, you know what, you can trust in government. So one of the things you can do, if somebody's being negative, but they have a genuine question, that's a good sign that you might have a misinformed constituent or somebody who's lost their faith, not somebody who has it in for you or your neighborhood council personally. What you can usually do to diffuse that situation is answer as if the person asked the question in a totally positive way. Just answer it very, very politely and answer it publicly as well. Give links so that everyone can learn more. You'll find that the rest of your audience, and not just that person, will appreciate that you're reaching out to someone, giving them another chance, treating them politely and with courtesy, giving them information. Almost always I've found that brings the person back into the fold. and that ends the negativity. But like I said, you do have to put your game face on and be nice, even though you'd rather you don't feel like it, sometimes. If somebody is being really, really ugly, if there are personal attacks, if there is bullying, please take a screenshot and let your city attorney representative know. Send it to your president through the city attorney, send it to your NEA if you need to. And if you need to blow off steam about trolls or ask advice on how to manage people, don't hesitate to write to me and let me know what you're struggling with. Now, remember, if people ask questions, whether they ask them nicely or not nicely, you do have to make sure that you are only sharing information. You can't answer questions that tie into opinions. You can't give an opinion on something because then you're going to violate the Brown Act. So you can say, you can learn more about this at this link, or you could come to our next public meeting about this matter and you can share an agenda. A couple of tips on account administration. Account setup is something that's going to be fleshed out. The recommendations for that are going to be fleshed out in the digital communications policy. But I always recommend, whenever possible, tie your social media accounts to a shared email address where several people have access to the inbox if you possibly can. Now, you can't necessarily do that with a platform like Facebook. If you are a Facebook page administrator for your neighborhood council, you know that you have to tie that to a personal Facebook account, but that's not going to open that personal account up to scrutiny by itself. Because you're back behind, no one sees you, no one knows that you're the administrator, as long as you remember to check the profile picture when you're posting and make sure you're posting as your page and not as your personal self. There is a new page experience that is rolling out on Facebook. You may have already seen the notice pop up on your Facebook page. I'll be teaching about those controls more in depth and trying to find a video tutorial so that you can watch it and get used to what the changes are. But it looks promising. I've had a preview of it, and it seems that you'll be able to administer your accounts in a more flexible way. So for example, if you want to give somebody access to your account but not give them too much access, you can have them use Creator Studio, for example. Here's a tip on gathering content from other neighborhood council members, because you're going to need content from other people, chairs of committees, other members of your board. It's a good practice to include everyone, although you shouldn't let everyone review every single post you make. Otherwise, you'll never be able to be timely and on top of it, which is a requirement for social media. So here's a couple of tips. Establish a standing agenda item to discuss material for the next month coming up on social media. Create a checklist for submissions so that actually make it a Google form, even better, so that someone, and make every question required, even if someone has to say not applicable, just so that they are forced to go through the list before they turn this into you, so that you don't have to keep chasing them down. Get the event name, the date, the time, the Zoom link, the agenda or the RSVP link, the graphics if they have them, or what should go on the graphic if you are the one making it, and a 1 to 2 sentence blurb so that you can, about what makes this a hot topic. You can also share a calendar or a list of routine deadlines, like by the second Tuesday of the month, I need everything that's going to go out during this calendar month. Whatever works for you, but set these parameters so that you're not suddenly burdened with last minute requests that you can't drop everything to take care of. That will help you share the duties and gather content. Similarly, sharing logins. Find a way to securely store your logins. Find a way to make sure that there is no login that your neighborhood council depends on that is only in one person's hand. We had a sad issue at one point where someone was the only administrator on their neighborhood council's NextDoor account. And instead of saying there was a workshop about how to manage if there is an active shooter that was going to be held at a local school, the title accidentally said active shooter at such and such school, and the word workshop was missing. And so there was a frantic search while messages and phone calls were coming in about the post to try and find the person who had the keys to that account. So fortunately, it's funny in retrospect. It was fabulously well attended because of the attention that it got, but you don't want it to happen to you. We were able to remedy that one, but if somebody walks away with your keys to your Facebook account or something like that, we may not be able to get it back for you, especially not until this digital communications policy is in place. There are a couple of kinds of social media and digital communications tools that the department does have administrative control over, and these are them. NextDoor public agency accounts. You see NextDoor posts from government agencies all the time in the public agency section. If you didn't know it, your neighborhood council has an account there as well. We can add up to 3 individual administrators for each neighborhood council's NextDoor account. So discuss who you want to add, send their email addresses and names to this address, nextdoor@empowerla.org, and we will take care of you. Canva Pro is a digital graphics, a graphic design app, especially for people who are not design professionals. The pro version of Canva, the free version of Canva is great, but the pro version is something that each neighborhood council has an account for. Everyone shares the same login. The reason why we subscribed to pro accounts for you is so that we could share custom templates for neighborhood council outreach with you. There are some items like light pole banners, for example, that neighborhood councils might want to make, which are not common things that Canva already has a template for. So you'll see these in a templates folder there. If you don't yet have access to your Canva account, please ask your NEA for assistance and they can hook you up. A few more content tips about what to share. News is great. Official notices, event invites, stories that impact your community, event coverage, especially when we get back to things when we're less in a social distancing environment, opportunities for fun or employment or for volunteering, workshops, learning, an opportunity to share feedback. Those are all great. Recognition of the achievements of your neighborhood council, the community you serve, or those who are in similar fields like other government agencies. A great thing another neighborhood council did. That would be a great post. And finally, things that tie to a sense of place and community. What are the landmarks in your community? What are the, some of the people that you can highlight? And be very careful about accidentally crossing the line into advocating for or promoting a business, because that is something that is not allowed for neighborhood councils. But you have somebody that's going to turn 100 next month in your community, for example, interview them about the changes they've seen in the community. Something like that. These kind of personal highlights are a great way to highlight your neighborhood and build a sense of community. I'm going to do a quick word about each of these. I want to show you something that's in your folder.
Hi, Anne-Marie. In the process, just want to let you know we have about 10 minutes.
Okay. Let me just show you something in the folder then, because these are all really fleshed out here.
And that link that Anne-Marie is sharing is in the chat. I will share it once more. I've shared it twice, as well as the survey, but I'll go ahead and share the link again.
Okay. So let's see. Oh, you know what? This is pointing at the wrong folder. I really apologize that it's misdirected. Let me get it for you. Okay, so this is the folder that you should have. I'm going to just grab the link right now, but I'll redirect that other short link to here as well. I am very, very sorry for my mistake. This is why you should always check your material before you start sharing it. So please don't do what I did. This is the folder that you should be in right here. And like I said, I'll redirect that Social Media Congress 2021 link to this folder afterwards. The old folder that you're looking at now is from a class last October. This one, this is the folder for this Congress, and it has this particular slideshow in it. This has a lot of data about, Jeffrey will share the chat for you, by the way. I see your comment. This has a lot of tips on how to use short links, accessibility, and a few other things as well. Okay, so please check out the content tips on how to use short links, how to use bio links, how to use hyperlinks that are going to be in that folder for you. There will also be some information on accessibility, how to use social media in an accessible fashion, and that advice is going to be from the Department of Disability. There will also be information on how to use alt text on different social media platforms. This slide shows where you would find that feature to describe images that you're sharing in Facebook, here on the left, and Twitter on these other two. And finally, questions. This is my email address if you have any questions for me. I will now take your questions for the remainder of the time.
Anne-Marie, in the chat, we have several questions if you'd like me to read them out for you.
Sure, thank you.
So, Ms. Myers is asking, will this presentation be easily shareable for NC board members who are not present?
Yes, I believe that we're recording the session, and you'll also have access to the slideshow too.
This question may need follow-up, but a question comes in asking, will you address a statement that was made during a training from Dunn that stated that liking something, stated something to the effect that NC members shouldn't be liking posts from their own NC, from their own neighborhood council?
Okay, what they were talking about there is, remember when I talked about AB 992, the Brown Act amendment? That's what they're talking about. Even one person liking one other person's post. If somebody, let's say that I'm, let's say I was still chair of my neighborhood council's land use committee. I say, hey guys, we have a meeting coming up on that new proposal down at the corner of X and Y streets. And I just post that, and I post the Zoom link, and I said, join us Tuesday at 6. If you come in and like my post, you could start crossing that. I mean, since it was an opinion post, it might be okay, but AB 992 says to not like things that are related to agenda matters or future agenda matters that are posted by other members of your own body. So in an abundance of caution, even if you see something that's just a straight on information post by a fellow board member, by a fellow committee member, just out of caution, because of the new Brown Act rules, don't hit the like button or the dislike button, as the case may be.
I like to sort of joke that I like to say you may disagree with someone on social media, but you just keep on scrolling. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is another way to deal with negativity as well. Sometimes you just go on to the next thing and it'll brighten your day. So.
Okay, and with that, I just want everybody also, I'm going to have the survey linked into the chat. It's going to be available for all members. I see one raised hand. John Campbell. Did you have a question, Mr. Campbell?
Hi, yes, thank you so much. So can you address meeting with stakeholders via Zoom in a non-NC setting? For example, a community meeting, I've been asked to participate in something like that, and I had concerns.
This class is more focused on social media. So are you concerned about interacting with stakeholders at a community meeting? Or what is the concern at the Zoom meeting exactly? Are you worried about whether they ask about items that might be on the agenda?
Might come up and be on an agenda at a later time, right? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't realize that question was kind of outside of your scope. Thank you.
No, that's all right. I usually teach this as a digital communications class, but because of the timeline, we're trying to constrain to social media. So But yeah,
Yeah.
it would be the same kind of thing would apply that I explained in the 992 overview earlier. You are allowed to share information. You're allowed to answer questions with a way to find out more. You're allowed to direct people to the appropriate public feedback channels, but you should explain to them that that isn't the channel. So remember when I was talking about the digital communications policy earlier, and I said, this is still a draft and this workshop is not the place to discuss it because it's in the commission's hands. So you want to make sure that they hear from you directly. That's the same kind of language you can use to say, look, I totally hear you and I'm glad you're interested and here's the meeting. You can even take someone's email so that you can send them a reminder. It's a great way to add someone to your list.
And Ms. Campbell, I put my email down if you'd like to get a follow-up as an NEA. I can definitely do due diligence and give you an answer on that question. And with that, we're going to be taking one last question. Ms. Myers, did you want to mention something?
Yes, I did. It's more two comments. And one is I've also put it in the chat. We're not able to save this chat. And I saw that earlier, so I don't know what happened on the Zoom settings. We can't even right click and save. So I'm hoping, therefore, y'all are saving all the chats.
I just saved it.
Yeah.
I just
Okay,
saved
so
it
that
and
we
I will
can-
save
Me as well.
it again.
I
Yeah.
Right. And
No
then
worries.
to the question from the, I'm sorry, I didn't hear her name, but I attend community meetings all the time and on Zoom, and I am the president of a neighborhood council, and also occasionally public hearings where we haven't taken an action yet. So it's always really good practice to say, hi, my name is, in my case, Laura Myers. I am an elected board member of the neighborhood council. However, I am speaking on my own behalf. We have not yet taken a position, or we have a pending position. Please come to the meeting, or possibly, because we've adopted over the last 20 years almost certain policies. So if we have an adopted policy that's generic, like for development, we want to see this, I can say that. But again, making sure you also say, we have not taken a position yet on this particular item. Come to a meeting.
And with that, thank you.
That is perfect. That
Yeah.
is exactly the right advice. And it's something you can do at an in-person meeting or in an online setting, whether it's a Zoom meeting or even an exchange on social media.